You're welcome back to the Eastern Business Report. I am Cherry Ojukwu. For every ambitious entrepreneur, manufacturer, or agro-processor across the region, the ultimate milestone of scale is breaking into the global marketplace and earning in hard currency. But taking that leap introduces a foundational operational dilemma that can make or break an international business before the first shipment even leaves the port. Should an enterprise take on the full weight, logistical complexity, and regulatory risk of exporting, or should they de-risk their entry by leveraging intermediaries, trade houses, or brokers through indirect exporting? Navigating these distinct gateways to global trade requires more than just high-quality products. It requires a deep understanding of market compliance, capital distribution, and structural scaling. Joining me live on this discussion segment to map out these operational pathways and help local businesses choose the right gateway to international market is the export consultant and founder, Export Chamber of International Trade and Investment, Mr. Tony Odukwe.
Good morning.
It's such a pleasure to have you, sir.
Same here.
All right, so when an SME decides it is ready to scale internationally, the very first fork in the road is deciding what branch of exporting they'd follow. So for a business owner tuning in right now, what is the absolute baseline definition of the path of export, and how do they fundamentally alter a company's operational structure?
Okay, if I understand that question clearly, it's any business that decides to play in the export field has to decide what it is they want to sell. Because, of course, there are a number of branches or different branches in export. And, if I delve into your question, I'd like to reel out a few of these branches. So, number one, in export, you have textile, which is the shipment of fabrics, made or unmade, clothes, right? Then you have agro-allied that has to do with farm produce, right? Or whether livestock or crops, right? Okay. Then you have solid minerals, and that has to do with gold, tin, or the different solid minerals, in the solid mineral sector. You have timber.
Yeah.
And then you have what we call merchant exporting. So a merchant exporter is somebody who does not manufacture anything, nor farms anything, nor mines anything, but they can take products from the local market and ship it overseas. So I can decide to take products from a Honeywell or a Dangote, whether it's spaghetti or Indomie noodles or whatever it is, and ship them out. So that's a merchant exporter, and that's the easiest part of exporting, because you're not really putting extra work to get the products together. So these are the different types, right? So if you want to become an exporter, or if you're already an existing business but you want to globalize and via export, you have to decide what products that you want to export. I just mentioned different kinds of products, but there is what we call export of services as well. These are not products, but they're also exportable. For example, Nollywood is one of Nigeria's largest export. I don't know if you knew that, right? Yeah.
Okay. How?
So they're exporting services, like their skills through acting is what they're exporting all around the world. Okay. And actually, they have helped build the brand Nigeria much more than any other exporter. So that is a branch of export as well. You as a broadcaster too, you have something to export. If your television is global and people see you from America, you're actually exporting services, right? So accountants and auditors and medical people.
Yeah.
These are also playing in the export field, but they're actually selling services overseas. Right? So these are the different kinds of export. So you have to decide what kind of product or service I am going to be exporting. Culture is also an exportable product, right? So you have to decide which one you want to do. So if you decide it's going to be agro-allied and then you deal on the agro-allied, you have to understand every aspect of agro-allied and the exportation process, the documentations that are required, the Incoterms, involved in, the transportation of these goods. And so if you decide on that, then you zone in and begin to, ship that out.
Okay, because I've heard that exporting is often praised as the perfect low-risk entry point because, you sell through local export management companies or agents. Now, however, Does relying on these middlemen insulate a business from risk, or does it just cut deeply into the hard currency profit margins?
Yes, it does cut down on your profitability, on your income, cash flow, right? But then, yes, it does reduce a whole lot of the risk. Before we started this show, we were discussing about something direct and indirect export. Yes, and at that time it didn't come to mind, but as we just discussed, it came to mind. Now you can have direct and indirect, exporting. Direct is when you're selling to the buyer directly. Okay. The buyer found you through a series of activities, maybe through social media marketing or trade shows, international trade shows. And so the buyer finds you and enters into discussions with you. And so after a short time or long time, whatever the case may be, of correspondence, you'll decide that business will have to be done. You have to ship and he's going to pay you, right? That is when you're exporting directly to a business. But then indirectly is when there is a middleman, a broker, right? Or a middleman who is appointed by the buyer overseas to aggregate a certain commodity in a local market, say, for example, in Nigeria. And so what that means is that they reach out to me because they know I have sesame. They reach out to you because they know you have 20 tons and I have 30 tons and they're looking for 100. So they find 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 other people that have, the tonnages that are required to make up the quantity they're looking to buy. Now, this broker or middleman receives money from the international buyer and then comes to us to pay us in local currency, right? So you can imagine that when you're paid in local currency and somebody else is paid in USD, the direct export is paid in foreign currency, you can see that there is much more profit in the person for the person receiving foreign exchange than the person receiving local naira, right? So that's where foreign and direct, direct and indirect plays in. But what was that question again?
Does relying on these middlemen insulate the business?
Okay, so I started to answer that already. Yes, it does. So even though the middleman is paying me in naira, but at least I'm sure I'm receiving full payment for my funds. I'm not bothered about Incoterms. I'm not bothered about shipments. I'm not bothered about what could happen at sea. Even though it doesn't happen very often, but sometimes a vessel could take a great hit at sea and it goes down, And so if you do not insure your containers, you lose all that money. But even if you insure the containers and you're going to get payment from insurance, it's not automatic. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, and that affects your cash flow as well. So dealing with a broker who comes to you locally and pays you eliminates a whole lot of risk. But these are not very big risk. Like in export, as long as you're asking for the right things, there isn't a lot to worry about. Like I said, the last time I came here, if you're going to sell to an export buyer, make sure you're asking for an LC. Don't ever deal with cash. Don't ever say, I ship the goods and then you pay me later, or pay me and I ship the goods. That's not how it works. The buyer has to give you an LC, which protects him and protects you as well. So with these in place, there's actually no risk to worry about. Yes.
No risk or little risk?
No risk at all.
Really?
Yes, because if the risk would be, for example, some inexperienced exporters have shipped goods to India. Indians are very fond of doing that. Oh, ship me the container, we'll pay you after that. Oh, you can trust me, you can trust me. You don't trust anybody. You don't know this person. And besides, they don't live on your continent, let alone in your country, right? So why should you trust them? But inexperienced exporters, a lot of times I say, okay, he gave me his word, so I'm going to source funds and ship the goods, hoping that he's going to pay me afterwards. And that's the end of it. They never get the money and they never get the goods back. So that's where there's a risk because of lack of experience. But if you're an experienced exporter and somebody finds you and decides he wants 10 containers or 2 containers or 20 containers of whatever it is, and you ask him to send you an LC, and he sends you an LC, there again, when you're choosing the kind of LC you have to use, you have a 30, 60, 90 different kinds of LCs, right? Again, if you're not experienced, you could accept a 30 means a 30 days LC or a 60-day LC, right? Okay. And again, that's dangerous because the buyer can cancel the LC while the goods are still on the way. So, right, the goods arrives and then the LC has been canceled and you lose out. So, but a real exporter would say, give me an irrevocable LC. Okay. So if you have all of this knowledge, there is practically no risk in export.
Okay,
Yes.
so on the flip side, exporting allows a business, to build a relationship with international buyers
Absolutely.
and capture maximum profit.
Absolutely.
So what kind of financial capital and infrastructure must an Enugu-based producer possess before they can even safely attempt direct exporting or any of the branches of export?
Again, you don't have to manufacture the things that you export.
Yeah.
You can play in the merchant area. You can become a merchant exporter, right? So where you play in the merchant exporting field, you do not necessarily have to have, a cachet, a chest, how do you call it, a large amount of money in the bank, sitting there. And you also don't need to go and start acquiring equipment and getting a warehouse so that you can set up a factory because you're a merchant exporter.
Okay.
All you need to do is to make sure that the buyer gives you an LC. Now, that LC that I keep harping on it's a financial instrument. It's not money, but it's given in lieu of money. So basically, you can call it money. It's a legal tender, right? So this buyer sends this buyer's bank. The buyer orders his bank to send my bank as a local exporter the LC. So the minute my bank receives the LC, and I know the documents are there, we look through the terms. It's a contract, but it's a financial instrument, like I said. We look through the terms, and any serious bank will give me money to the tune of the value on the LC to fulfill my order, right? And so where that happens, I explained the last time that what the buyer's bank does once the LC is issued is that they move the money from the buyer's account into an escrow account, telling me the money has left the buyer's bank, so your money is secure. Now, the onus is on you to make sure that you keep to the terms of engagement. And once I've kept to the terms of engagement, the goods get to the port, the receiving port. My money is released to me in hard currency. So there is absolutely no risk there, right? Now, so in that case, you don't have to have a factory. You don't have to have a lot of money because there is an LC that ensures that a bank or even some individuals who finance LCs, right? So there's always a way to get money once you have an LC, and that's what you need. But then if you're a manufacturer exporter, and then somebody finds you and decides they need what you manufacture. Now you have to have money, of course, to fulfill an order. If it's one container, if it's 20 containers, you have to have money to fulfill that order, right? Again, it doesn't matter. If they give you an LC, you'll always find a bank of industry or a commercial bank locally who's going to give you the money you need on the strength of that LC. So the secret here is that you have to insist that the buyer gives you an LC, and on the basis of that LC, you can fund practically any export. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So I'm really trying to. Okay, a major challenge with one of the branches you've just mentioned is that producers lose control over their brand. How their brand is positioned, priced, and marketed overseas when they don't have that LC, when they're inexperienced. So, at what stage of an enterprise's growth cycle does this loss of brand control become a liability that requires shifting to a more or a safer model?
When you say loss of brand, what do you mean by loss of brand?
Like loss of, when what's the word? I'm trying to put
Ask me that question again.
Okay, at what stage of an enterprise's growth cycle does this loss of brand control become a liability that requires shifting to a safer model, like you mentioned?
I don't see how a brand could lose
control. Brand
control. No, I don't think. The only thing you can lose is price control and not necessarily brand control. Yes, because the thing is, if you're a local manufacturer, right? You're a manufacturer, you're a brand already. You manufacture your goods, right?
Okay.
There is nothing the exporter does that makes you lose your brand.
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all. The export buyer does that will make you lose your brand. The two things that could go wrong is that the export buyer buys your brand and adulterates it, right? Or tries to make an inferior version of your commodities.
Okay.
But because you don't have access to the market where he plays, he starts to distribute the fake
of it.
Product that is a knockoff of your original, right? Now, if the content if the packaging, he gets the packaging right, but the content isn't the same quality, and he distributes it in the local market, but prior to that, people had experienced your original product, so they kind of like it. And then they're going to buy this inferior one because they had a good experience with your original products. They're going to find out that this is fake. So, but they could attribute it to you. They're going to say, oh, these guys are now shipping fake goods, right? So if anybody was planning to do business with you, they're going to say, no, cut it off. These guys are selling fake products now, not knowing that you're actually not responsible. But that's a tough thing to happen. It hardly ever happens. What can happen is that an export buyer buys your goods at a fixed rate that you've given it to them for, and then decide to sell it at a very exorbitant price. We have nothing to do with that because you don't play in that market. He plays in that market. So it can affect, the chances of people buying a lot of those commodities. And of course, if they're not buying a lot of those, people won't be coming back to you to supply. And so you lose the market and not necessarily the brand.
Okay. I'm clear. Thank you very much. So exporting demands that a business manages its own international shipping costs, customs clearance and foreign legal compliance, just the LC. So what are the most common logistical blind spots that cause first-time exporters in Nigeria to lose money?
Okay, good question. Now, again, like I said, export is sweet business. Export is very profitable, very, very, very profitable, right? And I'll advise anybody listening to me to go into export, right? And again, in the next couple of years, a lot of businesses are going to take a hit, going by the trajectory of the current administration, national administration, and their economic policies. So a lot of businesses are going to take a great hit. A couple of years ago, I predicted the dollar was going to get to 1,500. When I said this, the dollar was at about 300. So it happened. Now I'm predicting again, in the next couple of years, especially from 2027, a lot of businesses are going to take a hit because of the economic policies of this current administration. Local businesses are going to take a major hit. So I advise everybody to go into export. Now, having said that, there are certain Incoterms that are involved in export. So that's why I said you can go into export without learning the ropes, right? A lot of Igbo traders who control the economy of Nigeria today went through the Igbo boy system, the apprenticeship system, right? So they learned their ropes, and that's why a lot of them are millionaires and billionaires today, right? So don't go into export without learning your ropes. You have to learn your ropes. Somebody has to teach you the processes. And some of the things that you have to learn in export are the Incoterms involved in shipments. Right, so you have the FOBs, you have the X-Work. Let me quickly give you this. You have something we have the X-Works, right? The seller makes the goods available at their premises, factory or warehouse. The buyer bears almost all the cost, right, and risk from that point onward. You have FOB, you have FCA, you have these are different Incoterms, right, of shipment. Then FOB is where the seller puts the goods on a container and on a vessel. And from that point on, the buyer is responsible for the goods. So if it goes down at sea, the buyer is responsible. So that means the buyer should have insured the container before it left the seller's port, right? So that these are the different Incoterms. And inexperienced exporters will just jump into, agreeing to a certain Incoterm. And a buyer, knowing that you're not experienced, can offer a certain Incoterm. And because you're inexperienced, you accept it. But he's trying to cover his tracks to make sure he loses nothing. And then because of your inexperience, you'll accept that Incoterm. So if anything goes wrong, he's covered and you're bearing all the cost, right? So these are some of the things that you have to know about and choose the Incoterms that work for you. Again, the last time I came here, I talked about knowing the specifications that are accepted for every commodity that you're shipping to a particular country and the rules and regulations of the receiving country. Because, for example, there are certain things that our palm oil for a long time could not go into Germany, right? I don't know the status now, but for a long time it couldn't go into Germany, right? So imagine that you didn't know that as an inexperienced exporter, and then somebody tells you they want palm oil, and then you ship palm oil all the way from Nigeria. You've spent money, you've loaded the container, and then you ship it. Once it gets there, they're going to seize it, right? And of course, that's going to make you lose a lot of money because not only will the commodity be seized and you're not getting paid for it, Normally a conventional practice is that the customs of that country will make you pay for the destruction of that good. That means they're going to burn it, but they're going to charge you, send you the bill, whatever it cost them to move the thing to the place where they're going to incinerate it and all of that. So you have to be careful and make sure that you know all the different
and the ropes.
Yes, ropes of the trade. Yes.
Okay, so how does the current volatility in the foreign exchange market affect the cash flow of, say, a direct exporter managing their own international receivables versus an indirect exporter who's getting paid in local currency by a domestic middleman?
The direct exporter makes a lot more profit than the person dealing with the middleman. Now, if your middleman is a Nigerian, he's most likely paying you in naira. so it's just like you selling at the Western market or any of the local markets. You're selling at local market rate, right? So yes, apart from the fact that you have cash flow and that you're able to move goods in large quantities, you're almost no different from the trader at the market, right? Because that middleman can decide not to come to you that is a company for the supplies. They could actually go into the open market somewhere and buy from different distributors at the open market, right? So you're getting paid at the running local rates. But for the direct exporter, you're paid in hard currency. So if I'm shipping to Great Britain and I have a domiciliary account in GBP, Great Britain pounds, I'm receiving my money in Great Britain pounds, which is even a lot more money, right? So if I'm shipping to the US and I'm paying in dollar, I'm shipping to anywhere in the world and they're paying me in USD. I'm receiving USD. And of course, when you change to the local market, you stand a chance to make a lot of profit because of the strength of the dollar against the naira or the strength of the euro against the naira. So it's not comparable at all. Selling directly to the export buyer is more profitable than selling through a middleman.
Okay, so let's talk a bit about market intelligence. So when you export indirectly, the agent holds the customer data. So how can a manufacturer transition to direct exporting if they have been completely cut off from feedback regarding how global consumers interact with their product?
Okay. Good question again. It's quite simple, really, but like I said, somebody has to teach you the process. So you've been selling to an international buyer through a middleman. Most likely, the middleman is paid in USD, so he's keeping most of the money and paying you at the going local market rate, right? And so market intelligence is all you need, and what you need to do is cut out the middleman and go directly. And so, like I said the last time I came here, there are a number of ways to go directly. It's either you are attending trade shows globally. Not just globally, we have a lot of international trade shows that happen in Lagos too, at the, how'd you call that place that they knocked down? I've forgotten the name of the event center, but there are a lot of trade shows that happen there all the time. So make sure you go to trade shows no matter where they happen. Prepare yourself, print flyers, make sure you have a good website that talks about your products, your company, that has an address and has a current, contact info, right? And so go to trade shows, give out your cards, give out your flyers, talk to people. They may not really be looking to buy at that time, but go around different cubicles and tell them about your business and what you guys do. Because what happens is that you can go to a whole trade show and you walk into 50 cubicles. And then you talk to them about yourself and nobody says, oh, I'm interested in buying anything, right? But what happens is that because you're giving them a flyer or a card that contains your website and contact, 6 months later, somebody can call you up and say, hey, we met at so-and-so trade show. We weren't interested at that time, but now we're interested. Can you ship so-and-so, right? It starts the conversation. And normally the first thing they would require is for you to send them a sample. They'll place a sample order, maybe 1 kg or 2 kg or whatever it is that you're selling. You ship it out to them. They would normally pay for the cost of freight, right? So you ship it out to them. They test it. If it's good, more serious discussions, ensue. And from there, it could translate into 5, 10, 20 containers, right? So that's what it is. Make sure you go to trade shows. Now, but if you can't afford to go for trade shows, which are expensive these days, because of course you have to get your visa, get your flight ticket, pay for hotel, feed yourself out there. So you're taking local currency and spending in a foreign country. So it's expensive. But it works, right? So if you don't want to go that route, make sure that you have a properly built export website. It talks about not just about your company, but about the products that you sell, right? And then has some social media activity that helps you drive traffic from that social media to your website, right? That's the cheaper part, right? And so that way you can gain some global visibility and export buyers can begin to reach out to you. And once they start to do that and you answer their questions right, and you answer all the questions, you give them all the information they need, it would most likely lead to export. And once that begins to happen, you will have succeeded in cutting out the middleman, and then you begin to keep your foreign currency
directly.
Yeah, directly,
and the broader picture, it's all for growth.
For growth.
At the end of the year.
Because like I said, the beautiful thing about export is that a commodity that is selling for 150 naira here, when you ship it overseas, you could be making 1,000 and sometimes 2,000%, on the same commodity.
Yes.
Simply because the buying currency is stronger than the receiving currency, and so you make a lot of money.
Wow. This has been more enlightening from like a sequel of the last session, but we have to call it a day.
All right.
Thank you so much, sir.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, so that's the much that we can take on the Eastern Business Report. The Afia Business Morning returns tomorrow. Many thanks for staying with us. My name is Cherry Ojukwu. Bye for now.